Saluton kai bonvenon alla sekcio dedicita al esperantologio. Mia nomo estas Federico Gobbo kai mi estas la speciala profesoro pri interlingvistiko kai Esperanto en la Universitato de Amsterdamo, en kiu mi nun troviĝas. Hello everybody and welcome to the session devoted to Esperanto studies. My name is Federico Gobbo and I'm the special chair-holder of in interlinguistics and Esperanto at the University of Amsterdam, in which I am now. So now it's my turn, and I will. It is a bit strange, but I think that it can be also a good occasion for people who do not speak Esperanto to listen to a bit of Esperanto studies. That's why I wanted to present this study in English. The study is a pilot case study, as you will see, about Esperanto families and Europeanization. I'm going to start. So, Esperanto in Europe, I want to give you an overview over the about the relation between these two concepts. So, Esperanto is an offspring of the first globalization. We are living at least the second one, but the first one was in the Belle Époque by the end of the 19th century. This is not said by me, but by a lot of historians of science and technology and society. And you can see here just a list of innovations that were set at that period. There is no correlation one to the other. There is no correlation between Coca-Cola and Zamenhof and Kodak. But just to say that there was this flow of novelties at that time, just before the new century, the 20th century. So this is the cover of the first book of Esperanto in 1887, and it is written in Russian. And so this is Doctor Esperanto in Russian, and these are the two first words in Esperanto that you can see, por Russoi. And it was set by Ludwig Leisure Zamenhof, who was born in Białystok, a town now in Poland, and at that time under the Tsarist Russia. Zamenhof was a Jew, a Litvak, Ashkenazi, bilingual Yiddish and Russian, mainly with the mother and her father. And he wanted to set two projects for his life. One, to set a neutral language that eventually became Esperanto, and the other, a neutral religion or more of philosophy at least, called Hillelism and Homaranism, who were the topic of other people in this symposium. So what is Esperanto in a nutshell? Esperanto is a contact language, but not like a pidgin or a Creole, not spontaneous, but something planned, between three language groups, so Germanic, Romance, and Slavic, but very highly regularized in the morphology. And you can see here my favorite example in the Netherlands, at least, because it's very clear that pomo plus tero is terpomo. Terpomo are apples, so pomme de terre from French, from the lexical material, but art apple, terpomo as the morphological rules to put together the compound. So, Esperanto, the lullaby of Esperanto was in today's Poland, but in that time was, as I said, ruled by Russia. And so the first Esperanto speakers were mainly Russian speakers. So you can see these are the statistics, but exactly when the new century was coming, there were more French-speaking than Russian-speaking. So, in a sense, this is the way in which Esperanto went through Europe from the pioneers, first generation in the 19th century to the second generation of Esperanto speakers in the early years of the 20th century in Paris and in French-speaking area, not to forget French-speaking Switzerland. So when Esperanto became public in a strong sense, so it get attention to the media of the time, was in 1905 in Boulogne-sur-Mer during the World Esperanto Congress in Esperanto Universala Congresso, and that was a very strong moment for setting up the language and also the ideology behind the language. And in the famous first speech of Zamenhof at that time, Zamenhof set up this very famous quotation: "Ili parolas unu cum la alia, kiel fratoi, kiel membroi de unu natio." They speak one with the other as brothers, as members of just one nation. So there is a link, there is a bond beyond the language among Esperanto speakers. That's why they call themselves Esperantists. And that was the big dream of humanity, la bella sogno del Homaro. You see here, this was, let's say, a modern technology of the time. But the hope at that time that was that Esperanto could be accepted for international relations at all levels quite quickly. But unfortunately, that ended with the Great War, which completely changed the face of Europe from a political point of view, but also from a cultural and ideological point of view. And Esperanto survived it, yes. And for example, was a mean to survive. This is a quotation from a quite famous, actually, essay from Sir J.R.R. Tolkien, in which he tells about this story in which he met an Esperantist during the First World War, that thinking about Esperanto grammar, he could survive the horrors of the First World War. So when the First World War became evident that it was a war like no other war before, so very different, especially from the chemical weapons used, Zamenhof decided to publish bilingually in Esperanto and English in the British Esperantists in 1915 an appeal. And in that appeal, it became evident that he hoped, and this is the official translation of the appeal, that he wanted to have a United States of Europe arranged in a similar way to the United States of America. So it was really, let's say, have a long vision on that, and was, I think, one of the early thinkers that wanted to have this in order to avoid other world wars in starting from Europe. And I wanted to underline that, 1915. He passed away in 1917, and after his passing, as people in interlinguistics know very well, the passing of the founder, of the launcher of a planet language, is a crucial moment to understand if the language can survive or not. Because once the language is public, is put in the hands of the public, it is not held anymore, it's not held anymore by the launcher, by the original author of the project, but it is in the hands of the speakers. And what happened is that Esperanto had to change his positioning from a language representation and ideology after the First World War. So we have one language and one core ideology, that is this idea of brotherhood between the Esperanto speakers that still holds now, but also a lot of other ideologies. So I think that we should start talking about Esperantisms in the plural. I give you some examples on that. And you see that the first sociological profile of Esperanto speakers was made by this pioneer Tanquist and summarized by Roberto Garvia in a recent book in English that I recommend to you if you are not aware of the Esperanto ideology. And people at that time had the three main reasons to learn Esperanto: fostering peace, so something very political, having interest in languages, and having interest in travel, correspondence, and collecting, for example, collecting stamps. So political and religious propaganda are not the main reasons, okay? So peace is something more general, so linked to the brotherhood between among nations. So they emerged some specific ideologies linked to Esperanto. One was vegetarianism. A few people know, people who are vegetarians know that the first international movement of vegetarianism was set up by Esperanto speakers in 1908 in Dresden, who were also pioneers in vegetarianism movement. Or for the United Christianity, ecumenical people who wanted to rejoin Catholic, Protestants, and Orthodox in a new United Church. They wanted to use Esperanto as a bridge to praise God, and Christ. And it was also part of let's say, the left-wing ideologies at the plural, in a plural again. So anarchism, socialism, and communism. So against fascism and totalitarianism. It was called sometimes the Latin of the prolets. So workers from all over the world can unite also through Esperanto. So not using the national language of the bourgeois, but the languages of the workers. So why I say so? This is interesting because the idea of Esperanto for uniting Europe was already after the First World War the position of minority. I like to mention the fact that Tolkien was one of them, at least in the 30s. So that is a tool necessary for uniting Europe before it is swallowed by non-Europe. And he likes Esperanto in that sense. The thing he thought at that time that it was fit for this purpose, but that was a minor position from an ideological point of view, because the mainstream ideology of Esperanto is to be neutral, meaning that it should be the language of the world, not just for Europe. And here you can see from the same year, I think, I'm not sure on that, but this is the most accurate guess. In 1930, we have a warm up in Esperanto and in Dutch from the Propaganda Commissie te Nijmegen, in which you see that people speak from different, let's say, ethnic groups. So we can say now this is completely, of course, unfair for our standards, but we should not read that through the lenses of presentism. And you can see that is the language that unites the world. So the whole planet. So that is the main idea. So it is not important that Esperanto is for Europe. So this is the main background. And now I go to the social-linguistic definition of community of practice, because the Esperanto speakers are not a speech community in a stricto sensu, but a community of practice having the regular joint activity of Esperanto as the main point. And I wanted to summarize the results of one of my former students, Irene Caligaris, that I supervised in Turin in a brilliant master thesis. So she went to the field and asked the Esperanto speakers 2 research questions: how Esperanto collocating domains of use of the community of practice, because they are all multilingual, and how Esperanto shaped the speaker's identity with the other languages. 93 informants in 2 important congresses held in Italy. 44 questions, 8 pages, open and closed questions, interviews, semi-structured interviews, and so on. So the informants there are some. The profile is too homogeneous. So there were a majority of Italian first speakers, which is a possible bias. And almost all has a first languages Indo-European. Few came from the Far East, no, for example, speakers from Hebrew or Arabic. No English first speakers. And all of them had a quite high level of education, university students, or higher, some obtained a PhD. And the point is that there was a significant presence of Esperanto family speakers there. And these are the quantitative results. So Esperanto is the most known second language, which is not surprising, and immediately English follows. And people consider Esperanto as the language of friendship, lingua di amicizia, while English is the language of business. So two different domains, so no conflict. In many cases, high level of multilingualism, 3 or 4 languages in self-assessment, and even a high number of informants know classic languages like Latin, Ancient Greek, and also minority languages. So in a general profile, especially in the younger generation. On the qualitative part of the results, Esperanto shapes one's identity in one of these two directions, either in a multi-level identity, I am European, Italian, and Piedmontese, is a typical answer, or more on putting away national identities. I do not belong to any nation, kind of short cosmopolitanism that has some echoes of Atlantis a nationalism, if you know what I'm talking about. So apparently there is no contradiction perceived inside the community from the, let's say, in-group identity, the Gemeinschaft. We are members of the Esperanto land, and we are different. And the Gesellschaft, so the society, the connection with the outgroup. We are super partes, we are protected shield for languages and also minorities. But the point is, in the second remark, is that Esperanto family speakers behave differently in a statistically significant way. So this is the ideological position of Esperanto compared to 100 years before. International friendship is much more important than peace now. And this also triggers the possibility to form an Esperanto family, which was not mentioned in the pioneer study, sociological study mentioned before. So I have this here, a picture with one of the participants of our symposium, and she published 5 days ago a video about her speaking native Esperanto, so-called, and it has this video obtained 30,000 visualization in 4 days. Maybe now 5 days is 40,000, so a lot for Esperanto standards. It's remarkable. So native Esperanto speakers mojosas, which means that they are cool now. It's something that is very up to the front to the ideology. So I think that Esperanto family speakers need even more research attention that they had until now. And according to Caligaris, specific opinions on that are threefold. Either Esperanto families are a fact because the informant is a member of Esperanto family, full stop, nothing to say. It's part of my identity because I am an offspring of Esperanto family. Or a desideratum I would like to have, I consider to have with my future children, to speak to them to Esperanto, so to form this, and this could drive the Esperanto community to a kind of form of ethnization. This is something very debated in Esperanto studies in the last 20 years. Or for a tiny minority, but very firm and very fierce in its idea, it may be a threat to the neutrality of Esperanto, because now family speakers are not really native in the sense they do not have authority on the language. And as most Esperanto families live across Europe in a broad sense, I wanted to have a follow-up to this research made by Irene Caligaris and me with this short pilot study, okay, in which I asked about Europeanization. So I wanted to trigger the Esperanto identity from a lateral point of view. So what are the main traits of Esperanto families? So it is mother tongue mainly spoken by fathers, so it has a basic properties natural language. There are second, even third generations, and they're all bilingual. There are no monolingual Esperanto speakers. So I will take Europeanization as granted, because I feel that time is really flying away. So my methodology was to ask Esperanto families in 2016, what do they mean to be European. I received only 13 answers, all answers in Esperanto unless stated otherwise, and I translated that in English. Participation on a voluntary basis. And I grouped the answers along similarity lines. Basically, we have this kind of, these three different answers. First, downplaying the role of identity as a whole. I don't think that there is any kind of European identity, Esperanto identity, or anything like this. I am. I am, and I live. I don't care about identity. This is something that often happens. So they do not. But on the other side, you see, I do not like too much when they teach the national anthems or where they paint national flags on the face. So there is a kind of, let's say, not positive, too much positive attitude towards national signs. Sometimes European feelings are connected to sport. So in the World Cup, I will bet for European countries versus non-European countries, or linguistic feelings. You need the fact that I speak European languages means that I am European. Okay, so multilingualism shaped my European identity. This is also something that emerges very clear. So languages and sport as two, let's say, domains that trigger this. And I had only one family answer. This is something very interesting because I asked through a mailing list to the parents, but only a couple wanted to ask to the children. And in this 4-member family, the father from Scandinavia, mother from ex-Yugoslavia, they live in Scandinavia, and they feel that, of course, Europe is wider than the European Union. And when the children were asked directly, how do they feel about Europe and so on, they say, no, I do not feel to be European, but I am an Esperantist, and that's enough. So I don't see why we should care about European identity because I am already Esperantist. So in a sense, it feels a kind of need of being international for these children. So most answers are context-based. In many cases, they say, well, I'm European depending on the situation. So if I am among non-Europeans, I feel to be European, but in Europe, often I do not feel like this. But if I see refugees from outside Europe, yes, I feel European, and so I think that I'm very lucky. Only one answer was fiercely anti-European, saying there should be no European identity because this is in contrast with the idea of being an Esperanto speaker and an Esperantist, because Esperanto belongs to humanity. I will not do anything to be associated with Europe because I'm a member of humanity, and so only. So, and then there are two articulated answers in English because they wanted to be reported as they is. I will not delve into them because, of course, this means that the informants were at least not very, let's say, they did not trust a lot to the researcher, in that case me, or they wanted to push up that very clearly, and maybe you will read in a second moment there. Okay, so the evaluation of this pilot case study is that the European feelings of Esperanto family speakers are variegate. The common traits are refusal of militaristic and imperialistic attitude, that's for sure, and a kind of plastic, ludic, light idea of territorial identity and identity in general. And this is only a pilot study because the coverage is very limited, only 13 answers, all on voluntary basis. And I had only parents answering to that. So, of course, this is still to be investigated much more. So, Esperanto identity is autonomous in general. It is not. It can have some overlapping with European identity, but in many cases it has not. And there is no special desire for the Esperanto family speakers for Esperanto to become official in the European Union, something like that, like. Or in similar way, like Zamenhof envisaged in 1915. That's not important for them anymore. So future research on that may be connecting from an ideological point of view the ideologies behind Esperanto families, the reality of Esperanto families, and the desires made by Zamenhof in a famous letter in Russian to Abraham Kofon, when he said that the first nucleus of Hillelism the neutral people should be the Esperanto families. But that, of course, is future research. So my time is going over. I want to give a space to maybe one question at least. So I will end now, and thank you for your attention. Dankon pro via atento. So there is a question: do you think there is still a chance for Europe to be adopted as the language of the European Union? Okay, so thank you for this question. So I think that the fact that Esperanto family speakers in particular and Esperanto speakers in general do not care too much about that means that there is not a priority for them. And if they do not push Esperanto in a political way, because this is, of course, a political statement, why should the others? So I think if there is a chance, it should be very little, because there is only a minority of Esperanto speakers that want it. There is another question. Many multilinguals, not Esperantists, have also trouble to identify themselves to one particular nation or country. Absolutely. Do bilingual, not multilingual Esperantists provide different answers than multilinguals? Well, in my study, I can say that family speakers are really polyglots. They know a lot of languages, so they are not very bilinguals in many cases. So, and then my pilot study. In the study made jointly with Irene Caligaris, we did not see any statistical difference or from this kind of thing. And in general, only a little minority of the interviewees declare themselves to be only bilingual, in the sense having their first language, their national language, the main language, typical Italian, and Esperanto and nothing else. So this, I think it is worth investigating, but in a sense, purely bilingual Esperanto speakers, I think they are a rarity. The majority of Esperanto speakers, I think, they speak 3 or 4 languages. Kiam oni povas diri ke oni jam estas Esperantisto? Dankon. Okay, when you can say that you are an Esperantist. So this is a very complex answer for this question. I consider Esperantism as the ideological level, okay, so horizontal, while the proficiency in the language, Esperanto speaking capability, on the vertical level. So they are 2 independent variables that I can tell you. Why? Because there are some Esperantists that do not speak one word, they only believe in the language in one sense. I have met them, believe me. And there are other very fluent Esperantophones, Esperanto speakers, they say in Esperanto, mi ne estas Esperantisto, char mi ne volas aliĝi al la movado, mi ne interesiĝas pri propagando, Esperanto estas mia lingvo kaj estas nur lingvo. So we have the 2 extremes. Kion montras via esploro? Ĉu Esperanto-familioj pli multas dum lastaj jaroj aŭ fariĝas malmultaj? The question is if there is a growing in the numbers of Esperanto families. Well, I don't know, because my study is not longitudinal, so it's very short and it's very synchronic in a sense. What I can, my impression is that there is growing attention and there is a shift in the ideology of the Esperanto speakers, giving more and more attention to the Esperanto families, even as a reality or as a possibility. Well, I have to chair myself, and I think the time is over. I thank you all for your very interesting questions.